your problems are, solving all your problems, coming in, giving it all to you in an interview, and then going home. So I didn't expect the interview was going to give me answers to questions. I expected it was going to give me an insight into the man. I liked that about him. I thought that he had gone out and done some research. He had thought about Middleboro before he came here. That shows a degree of caring, it shows a degree of commitment, it shows a degree of interest that I didn't see in the other candidates. My concern with him, just body language, discussion. He's a very smart man, that's clear. There's no question about it. And to some degree, I'm wondering, because Middleboro is still a small town, whether an open-door policy would work with him. I don't know if certain of the characters that we have in our town, trapping him in his room, would make him crawl up the walls and look for a window to run out of. I know I've done that a couple of times. But you know, if the man has, as we would call it in polite society, if he has the stones for it, he certainly has the brains for it. But his low-key manner makes me wonder whether or not he would go knock on the door, or whether he would write the letter, Steve. I agree with you. That's my concern. But I think he's got all of the other attributes that are necessary from the financial perspective that we need. Let me get to Mr. D'Agostino. People have read a lot of articles and looked at a lot of things, blogs, articles, discussed things with people. I went out through the ECF system, which is the electronic court filing system, and pulled the complaint, pulled the answer, pulled the jury verdict, and pulled a number of the other documents and read them. What it said to me, and this has nothing to do with whether the merits of the case were valid or invalid. You had a jury verdict. That's what it is. It's a verdict. The law doesn't find the truth. It finds a set of facts upon which you can make a decision. That's what it's meant to do. When I read it, there were a lot of facts in there that disturbed me in terms of what was being alleged and the fact that he ultimately lost and that the town ultimately lost. What disturbed me most was that there was a personal liability portion of it and that there were punitive damages attached to it. That is the trifecta of this type of litigation. You don't see that often. I mean, there is a level of immunity you have, and this went past that. There is a level of deference they give to public employees in terms of their actions, but there were punitive damages. There also was in the docket what appeared to be, after the verdict, there appeared to be a stipulation of settlement, but no settlement in the record, which I, in my opinion, because I don't know for a fact, came to the conclusion there must have been a settlement agreement with a confidentiality provision, which restricts the ability of an individual to have complete candor in what they're talking about, because that's what those documents are designed to do. They're designed to keep a certain level of confidentiality around a material. But let's get to, all right, fine, that happened in Mansfield. People are entitled to a mistake. No question. That should not carry forward for the rest of their lives and keep them out of things. Here's the rub. And I asked the question, and he said he didn't have a problem with it. He pulled the trigger, right or wrong. He pulled the trigger in a circumstance. He's now sitting in Middleboro. Does he pull the trigger, or is he gun-shy? Is he not pulling the trigger because he's afraid of this type of a consequence in the future? If he pulls the trigger and the employee sues, does someone make the argument that his prior acts and practices in another town should bleed over in the Middleboro? Now, I know as a lawyer that the prior acts of a person are discoverable in discovery. I don't know if they're admissible as evidence, but I know that if that type of a fight came up, there'd be a fight over whether or not that stuff is admissible, and it exists. So do we, by hiring him, end up bringing in someone that's got a scar on their body before you ever get into a war you may need to fight. So that's my legal issue with him. I thought he interviewed quite well. I thought he was quite bright, and I think he's got a exceptional background, and I don't disagree with any of the things you folks said with regard to Mr. D'Agostino. It's that one element that makes me worry, and when you weigh those elements together between what Mr. Cristello may have or he may not have, and you weigh that against what Mr. D'Agostino has and may have, I come to the conclusion in my mind that Mr. Cristello moves forward in that race. And so my view would be that Mr. Cristello, of these three, would probably be the best person to take on the role of town manager. I too would love to see more, additional people. But of these three, if we were pushed and there were a motion on the table, my vote would probably go to Mr. Cristello. Does anybody else want to speak? I figure we got to go back.
Sure. I've been on this board 3 years. I've been sued plenty of times. Some of the times we've lost. Some of the times we don't think we should have lost. And I had questions, and I asked the search committee, and they said, do you think that we would have brought you somebody that we thought that this was an issue on? So I know that the final decision is ours. But we have 1, 2, 3. I mean, how many former selectmen do we have on the search committee? Wayne?
5 or 6.
5 or 6. So, you know, and again, I checked with people around town hall if they'd have an issue with this person. So Mr. Cristello said, Hingham. Well, we're not Wayland or Weston. I mean, I'd hate to have him give us the tax rate that they've got in Hingham. You know, we're dealing in a different financial situation. I was turned off by Mr. Units when he said this could be a great place, because I think Middleboro's a great place right now. Got a lot of things that we can always do better.
There you go.
I think we're a great place. I definitely thought that Mr. D'Agostino had a lot more experience in managing the kind of town that we have, which is half industrial of the distribution type in up in North Middleboro and rural. When Mr. Cristello said they're almost out of economic development, you know, he's got one project. You know, he's got the shipyard. You know, and he's got a assisted living facility. You know, that he's got the equivalent of Oak Point and one thing. Again, it's a reasonable sized thing, but it's one thing. He has, you know, he's flush with cash, and he has not made any of the hard decisions that I see Mr. D'Agostino with. And I was the one that didn't like the first set of candidates that we had and kind of dug my heels in. I'm much more pleased with this set of candidates. I would have absolutely no problem with Mr. D'Agostino, and you know, I think that just the fact that we get sued every Monday night or every other Monday night as a Board of Selectmen, he's got one blemish on his record after a whole bunch of times. I believe that there were even some selectmen from Mansfield that were in the audience when we met on Saturday. Clearly the town moderator from Mansfield was there. I don't think they were sitting here saying, let's go and support the guy to get rid of the guy. I think they were here, and he offered up, talk to any of the selectmen. You know, I checked with everybody before I did what I needed to do, so he wasn't pulling the trigger as the expression that he used with, or I know that you used it, Adam, without complete consultation. So he wasn't running fast and loose. He wasn't a cowboy. He was a prudent business person thinking that he was doing what was right for the town. I have no problem with him at all.
Well, just to follow up on that, because I'm not sure. I've read the amended complaint, and I've read the documents that came after. I'm not sure which trigger being pulled he was talking about. There were 2 triggers. First, there was an MCAD complaint, and that got dismissed, and then there was a trigger pulled. Now, were they supporting him after that trigger was pulled? After the events occurred? I don't know. I'm not sure. And that's part of the thing that, I mean, all I could do, because I was curious as to why the selectmen were sitting here, which is one of the reasons I went back to the docket sheet.
But he did tell us that he checked with them before he took the termination action.
Well, and I'm trying to figure that out from what the allegations were, because I'm trying to see how they square. And, I was trying to figure out why the selectmen were here, and part of what I was wondering, after I saw the docket sheet, and I could be wrong, it's an opinion drawn without enough facts, that maybe they were here to make sure that he didn't violate the confidentiality agreement, because there were, no, that's
No, I'm not
sometimes what
laughing
you
at it,
do.
it's just, I never thought of that.
Yeah,
you know?
but part of that, I thought that somebody had told me that one of the plaintiffs was in the room also. And that may have also been a reason why they were there, just so everybody had a witness in the room to know whether or not he violated the confidentiality agreement. But I don't know that there's a confidentiality agreement. I'm surmising from my experience